the first thing to think about is, what are we talking about? If we just think of AI as this black box, essentially, a technology that landed from another planet on the Earth and is much smarter than us, and somehow we need to figure out how to control it. That problem is unsolvable. If a super intelligent system does land on Earth from another planet, we are toast, right? We are simply going to lose, because that's what super intelligent means. Just as we lose if we try to play Go against AlphaGo or AlphaZero, we try to play chess against Deep Blue or Stockfish. If you're trying to defeat a superintelligence in the real world, you lose. That's the definition. And so we have to actually open up this black box and say, what's inside? How does it work? And how can we design it so that it necessarily is beneficial to human beings? So this question actually is an old one. Alan Turing, who is the founder of computer science, and in 1950 wrote a very famous paper called Computing, Machinery, and Intelligence, which was really, I think, the beginning of the discipline of AI. In 1951, he spoke on the radio, the BBC, and he basically said, look, eventually the machines are going to overtake us, and we're going to lose control. And he had no remedy for this. It was very matter-of-fact. There was no panic, but just this is what's going to happen. And that prediction comes simply from the fact that machines will eventually exceed our decision-making capabilities in the real world. There's not a lot we can do about that, right? As I think David mentioned, there's no stop sign here, and you can see why, right? If you work out the economic impact, just a little back-of-the-envelope calculation, what would the economic value of human-level AI be if we achieved it? Well, if we had human-level AI, we could, for example, very quickly raise the living standards of everyone on Earth up to a kind of, let's say, Upper East Side living standard. And you can calculate the net present value of that transition. It's about $15,000 trillion. So that's a conservative estimate of the size of the prize that companies like Google are aiming for, and countries like China are aiming for. So if you think that us sitting at this table and the people in this room can put a stop sign in front of $15,000 trillion of motivation, I think that's probably optimistic. So we have to understand what is the failure mode, right? I mean, let's face it, we're investing, right now, just the announced investment plans of all the major nations and countries around the world are about $1 trillion over the next decade in AI research and development. So if we're investing $1 trillion in something that's going to lead to our own destruction, something is seriously wrong. So we need to go back and look, what is this thing that we're making, and why and how precisely could it cause these serious problems that people are afraid of? So in 1960, Norbert Wiener had just watched Arthur Samuel's checker playing program learn to play checkers considerably better than its own creator. That was a big event. It was televised. And that was really, in some sense, the exact progenitor of AlphaGo, which had a huge effect when it defeated Lee Sedol a couple of years ago. And what Wiener saw is that this technology is going to continue to accelerate and to lead to exactly the kind of problems that Turing talked about. And the reason would be that the machines will pursue objectives, and if those objectives are the wrong ones, then humanity will lose control, because the machine, it'll then be like playing a chess match for the world, right? The machine is pursuing some objective that we have put into it, and if we put the wrong objective in, then it will succeed in its objective and we won't. And so he likened this to the Sorcerer's Apprentice story, but you could also liken it to the King Midas story or Aladdin and the lamp. You know, whenever you ask the genie for a wish, your third wish is always, please undo the first two wishes, right? Because it's very hard to specify objectives correctly. And we've only been shielded from that, as Wiener pointed out, by the fact that machines up to now have been pretty stupid. And if you put in the wrong objective, as we often do, we can usually reset them because we're just basically working in the lab, right? But as we've seen with the Clickthrough catastrophe, their AI systems are now out there in the world having an impact on a global scale. And we haven't yet been able to press the reset button on social media. It's still happening. What can we do about that, right? The answer is actually to go back to the definition of artificial intelligence, which has been since the beginning that we build machines whose actions can be expected to achieve their objectives. Right? And this was borrowed directly from the notion of human intelligence. A human is intelligent if their actions can be expected to achieve their objectives. This is what we mean. The more technical version is rationality. And that principle is not just for AI, but it's also central in economics, in statistics, in control theory, in operations research. In all these disciplines, basically what you do is you create mathematical or computational physical machinery, and then you specify an objective exogenously, and you put it into the machine, and it optimizes that on your behalf. That's how those disciplines work, and that's sort of one of the main underpinnings of 20th century technology. But that way of doing things is a mistake, because when machines are sufficiently capable, as I've already pointed out, if you put the wrong objective in, you can't control the result. So, for example, you might say, it would be great if we could cure cancer as quickly as possible. Right? Who here could possibly object to that? Sounds very reasonable to me. But when a machine is optimizing that objective, probably it would induce tumors in the entire world population so that it could run as many medical trials as possible in parallel in order to find a cure as quickly as possible. Right? And it's no good saying, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention this other thing, like you're not allowed to experiment on humans, and you're not allowed to do this, and you can't do that, and you can't spend the whole world GDP on this project, and blah, blah, blah. Right? I mean, whenever you give an objective to a human, they already have a whole array of concerns and understanding of other people's concerns and constraints and so on, against which they interpret this new objective that they've been given, and they might even just say, that's a ridiculous objective. I'm not going to work on, that problem. So when we think about how to design machines, I think we actually need to have a different view of what AI is, or what AI should be, which is machines whose actions can be expected to achieve our objectives, not their objectives. So not objectives that we put into them, but objectives that remain within us.